welcome to the International Gaming Standard Association Conversations. The IGSA Conversations are just that, conversation between various gaming industry professionals discussing a specific topic. They're intended to be informative and to generate questions. I'm Peter de Raad, IGSA's president, and today we have with us Ethan Tower, Technical Director at IGSA. Hello, Ethan, welcome.
Hi, Peter, thanks for having me.
Today's conversation topic is a short introduction of GSA Certification Database Interface Standard, or CDI. GSA will also be hosting a 1-hour Zoom session with Q&A on how GSA standards benefit regulators. So let's discuss, can tracking gaming submissions be simplified? Hello, Ethan. Today I'd like to discuss how standardization can help streamline the product submission process and perhaps provide more transparency as to product testing and approval status.
Sure, that's what the Certification Database Interface does.
Well, that's my understanding. I also believe that the standard was developed in response to a request that the members of the GSA Regulatory Committee made. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is. As you know, the Regulatory Committee is open just to regulators. They meet once a month to discuss common issues and brainstorm solutions. They're kept at arm's length from the rest of GSA, so they have their own sandbox to play in. And the GSA staff were invited to attend when they need us.
So essentially, the Regulatory Committee is the trusted environment within GSA for regulators to freely share ideas, knowing that nothing will be discussed to the broader GSA unless they approve it?
Yeah, that's right, and that's really how CDI got started.
All right, so now, Ethan, what is CDI exactly?
Well, before we get into CDI, let's just quickly go over the product submission process so people understand the context we're working in.
All right, go for it, Ethan.
Okay, so to keep things simple, I'll try to describe a generic process, not one that's for any specific state or testing lab. And we'll use software as an example. The process would be very similar for hardware submissions.
All right, okay.
So the submission process starts with a supplier creating a submission package. It includes the documentation that describes the software, what the software does, copies of the software, all sorts of paperwork and documents that need to go to the testing labs and the regulators. The package is first sent to the lab, where the lab logs the receipt of the package, evaluates it for completeness, and if everything's good, they schedule the software for testing.
So there could be a bit of back and forth between the lab and supplier before testing actually begins.
Oh yeah, there could be. Yeah, usually there's quite a bit of it as the lab tries to learn, learn about the products that are being submitted by the supplier. And typically the suppliers have their own compliance departments that handle these submissions. They act as the contact point for the labs, and as issues come up, conversations happen and they sort things out.
Sounds like there's potentially a lot of time spent dealing with these issues and perhaps even getting the information shared accurately, right, to allow for testing to progress.
Yeah, I mean, meeting regulatory requirements is not simple, and the dialogue that goes on is important to making sure the product goes through the cycle as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and if a serious issue is found, sometimes the suppliers have to withdraw the submission and fix things and resubmit it, or they can ask the lab to continue with their testing to see what else they find while they're working on fixing the problems that have already been identified.
So, and I imagine the testing being done is not for just one jurisdiction, right?
Well, that really depends because, sometimes the submissions are going to a state lab and then no, it's only for that state. But if the submission's to a third-party lab, suppliers can ask for the software or hardware to be tested against the requirements for multiple jurisdictions.
Okay, so in the end, when all the issues have been addressed and the testing completed, an approval letter for one or more jurisdiction is issued.
Yeah, that's correct. At the end of the goal at the end of the day is to get the approval letters. Unfortunately, the approval letters are formatted differently by each lab, and sometimes they're different for each jurisdiction. There might be different pieces of information or different terminologies being used in different jurisdictions. So nothing, in fact, is standardized at that level either.
Wow, okay. So now tell us how CDI helps make this process more efficient, and I'm guessing more transparent.
Well, CDI is really designed to help automate this whole process. And it looks at the process from 3 different perspectives: the supplier, the testing lab, and the regulator. Each of them typically has its own systems with databases that are that are storing the product submission, testing, and approval data. So CDI allows the suppliers to send the packages electronically to the labs. They can also request current status information. And once the products have been tested, the test results can be added into the packages, and then the packages can be sent to the regulators. So in the end, this ends up eliminated a lot of rekeying and potential errors, just making everything more efficient.
So instead of the lab engineer sending an email with attachment to a supplier engineer who may then need input from other department groups within the organization, the information is in one place and accessible.
Yes, that's the idea. You know, it gets everything into one place. It allows the regulators to check on the products being submitted for their jurisdiction. They can see what's going on. The suppliers can see what's going on. And then, you know, as things are moving through the process, as I said, the labs are going to add the testing results. The regulators add the approval information once they've looked at everything. And ultimately, it eliminates a lot of paperwork and speeds up the whole process.
Well, I can see that, and that's definitely a win for all three parties.
Yeah, I think it makes it much easier for the suppliers, labs, and regulators to exchange information and monitor what's going on. It also helps to make sure that everyone's working from the same information, which is, you know, a big benefit in itself. And there's also some other benefits of CDI too.
Okay, what's that, Ethan?
Well, you remember the blockchain white paper that GSA published a few years ago?
Yeah, the one with use cases within the gaming industry that the blockchain technology could help with, right?
Right, that's the one. And one of the use cases was about shipping notifications. If I remember correctly, the AGA had done a study and found that each supplier had an average of about 30 people dealing with shipping requirements. And I think they found that each of those suppliers was generating 60,000 filings each year.
Yeah, I seem to remember that.
Well, CDI helps streamline that process too, without actually using blockchain.
So how does it do that?
As I said, you know, CDI connects together the suppliers, labs, and regulators. In the case of the shipping notifications, it's a conversation going on between the supplier and the regulator. CDI lets the supplier post shipping notifications to the regulatory systems and then get approvals to ship back from those systems. The shipping notifications often reference the approvals that we were discussing earlier, which kind of, you can see how the efficiencies are building.
Yep.
So this can help eliminate lots of forms and manual processes. And it can be simpler for both parties and provide much better transparency.
Yeah, I know that process is quite challenging for both suppliers and regulators. And I can see why the regulators would be interested in finding a way to make a process better, right?
Yeah, efficiency benefits everyone. I think the suppliers, regulators, operators, labs, everyone's trying to be more efficient. And that actually reminds me of one other piece of functionality that's in CDI.
What's that, Ethan?
Well, in some jurisdictions, the operators have to file paperwork whenever they do things like moving slot machines or changing game software. CDI, one of its pieces of functionality, lets the operators post those work orders electronically to the regulator and then get the approvals back. They don't have to rely on email, fax forms, or paper submissions.
Well, it sounds like quite a comprehensive suite of functionality in a single standard.
Yeah, and kudos really goes out to the RC who came up with the idea and worked with us to make the solution as efficient as it is.
Yeah, very, very true. Let me see if I can summarize this conversation, Ethan. CDI, or the Certification Database Interface, is a data exchange standard that allows information about product submissions, like testing progress, and issues found to occur electronically. It provides greater transparencies to the suppliers looking for information on the testing progress and issues found, and to regulators who can see what products have been submitted for their jurisdiction and also see the testing results as they occur. CDI also speeds up the problem solving and approval issuance processes. CDI also looks to streamline the supplier to regulator shipping notification and tracking process, as well as the operator to regulator work order process, eliminating different forms and communication methods while placing them with a single standard electronic solution.
Yep, yeah, that's about it. It's a lot of functionality, but under the covers, it's really quite simple.
It is indeed. Well, Ethan, thank you very much. It was very interesting to know more, have more insights on the CDI standard. And to our audience, thank you for listening. Please send us your questions and comments by contacting us. Information on doing so can be found at our website, igsa.org. And until the next conversation, thank you.